Meeting to order at 6:09 p.m. I'm going to do a roll call first. Position 1, Chris Durrett.
Present.
Position 2, Martina McNichols is absent. Position 3, Donald Atkinson.
Present.
Position 4, Damon Collins.
Present.
Position 5, Jason Black. I'm present. Position 6, Derek Dalmelin.
Present.
Position 7, Rabina Spruill.
Present.
Okay, please join me as we say our pledges. United States first. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the text is, honor the Texas
flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. We'll start our meeting off with public comments, for which we do have a public comment today. Mayor Dan Davis. Mayor Davis, please note that we have a 3-minute restriction on these.
Time limit, okay. Hello, my name is Derek Dalmelin. I live at... Good evening, board members. Dan Davis, 6818 Powell Lane. I'm here tonight. You have an item on your agenda, which is a payment authorization to the city for the 160-acre municipal complex, and I wanted to take time to be here tonight just to express my appreciation to the board for your partnership with the city on this complex. I know the agreement in and of itself is something that has been and will be discussed in the future, but I believe that we have an exciting opportunity in front of us for that 160 acres. On the 19th of February, coming up next week in the afternoon, we are having a city council strategy session where a big focus of it is going to be talking about the 160 acres. If you guys are able to attend, we would love to have you there so that way we can take a collaborative approach between the city, council, EDC, and ultimately finding ways to engage the community in that. This payment that you're going to authorize is something that is going to go to help fund that water reclamation facility. As you are well aware, that's a key component to all commercial growth happening in the city, especially the 160 acres. So I just wanted to take time out of my evening to be here to look at you in the eyes and say thank you for what you do, and thank you for your continued partnership with the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we have no further public comments, so we will move on to our regular agenda. Our first item A is consideration and possible action to authorize payment to the city towards Project 2020-02 City 160-acre Municipal Complex Project. I believe, as Mayor Davis just explained to us, this is part of the agreement that the board has already approved. Tammy did want to bring this to the board so that the board would know that we were going to be transferring $1 million. $1 million from our account to the city's account. Any questions on that?
Which one was the one when it was $1 million every year? Is this the one? Sorry.
So it's not actually always $1 million. The debt payment this year, the EDC portion is $1 million, but if on your budget, it's 90% of the revenue
That's right.
For the year. So as more revenues come in the sense of sales tax dollars, the more,
Okay.
the higher that balance is. For
Gotcha.
this, it was just $1 million coming out though.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any further questions? No? Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve agenda item
We have a
A.
motion?
I second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, we'll move on to B, consideration and possible action on establishing business grant categories and dollar amounts. So this is something that we asked to put on at our last meeting. As we go back to our strategic plan that we had made, a big component of that for us as a board has always been small business grants or business grants in general. And, because we have limited funds, I think it's important for us to put limits on these amounts. In the strategic plan, Next Group had a $15,000 annual budget for just the grant portion of it. In my opinion, that's not a whole lot of money, and we can't do a whole lot with that amount of money. But Tammy did provide us with some numbers that we have. We do have about $1.8 million in our war chest, as I like to call it. As we talk about what we're going to do with this, I think in my opinion, we should put some limits on it. I do think that we should have limits. I think we should probably move a little bit more than $15,000 annually into this. My just off the hip thought was $50,000 a year, and we can pull that out of our fund balance and still be able to do that. We haven't had a whole lot of projects in the past few years that would have put us over anyway, but we want to be able to have access to that. And this is just for the grant portion. So, the 50,000 would go for the grant portion, plus we would still have, the list of things that Chad and them gave us as far as making investments into different projects and things like that. So we can have open discussion on this, and I know that we have a lot of materials that Tammy printed out for us. She had sent some of this stuff by email earlier, and it's a lot of information. I don't fully expect for us to leave out of here with the finished product. If we do, that's wonderful. But I would love to see us just start getting some ideas down and have a direction in which we want to go. Anybody have any opening remarks on that they'd like to share?
And go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to ask, so, and I wish I had the numbers right here in front of me, but out of the, you said it was 15,000 is what Chad had put in the budget? So that is basically for us to have a balanced budget, right? And so what we're talking about is reallocating that budget in a way, or pulling from,
Our fund balance. Yeah, so I have it pulled up here, so I'll just read it for everybody so that we know. Based off of our estimated budget of about $200,000 annually, $20,000 was for community learning exchange tours. That was to go visit the community centers out of town. $67,000 was a feasibility study for the community center. $48,000 was to have 20 prospect meetings per year to recruit high-paying jobs. That was us paying a third party to do that, and they would come in and help us with that. $50,000 was debt service payments should we go buy land and start developing the Old Town District like we talked about, and then $15,000 for small business grants. So if we don't go out and we don't have debt service payments, there's $50,000 right there. So if we haven't bought anything and we don't have that in year one, that money can then just move around from there. We generally, I want to say we usually in our budget have a pretty good amount, $800,000 available to us, and most of that we're transferring out of our fund balance to use, and we don't usually use it, and so it just kind of stays in our investment accounts. So there's money there. We're not, I think that we want to be conservative and not spend all of the money out of the fund balance, but we also want to be able to help projects as they come as well, and so.
Yeah, 'cause there were several different items in there that for year one, we're really not at that point. Like
Sure.
getting the consultant in there to find the leads for us and all that. We're not at that point yet. So there is the extra money there that the way he broke down the budget, that we don't need to put like 20 contacts, we can do it for 10. So it's half that amount, that type thing. So we got more money to go, and this is just for us a guideline on these, the way we pick it. We can still go above that if we choose as a group, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Because there's going to be some projects, even though it's a grant, that they come in that, because we talked about doing it as a tiered deal. It's, this is this amount, this, just an automatic for the people that's applying for it, that they understand that, hey, this is the limit if you're doing this. But with the right people, right situations, we can go above that.
Correct. So if we, to that point, if we had, a really big aerospace manufacturer that's coming to town and they're asking for $400,000, but they're going to create 350 jobs and invest, $80 million into our community, we would look at that differently than, if somebody's putting a coffee shop in or something like that, right? And so we will have that ability to be fluid with that. We're just kind of putting guidelines down, but as a board, we can make the decisions that we want to make and change that as we go. I think an important part of this as we set this up is so that as we all phase out of these boards, that they'll also have guidelines. And when they come in, it's something that we've already done, put the work into, and done the work on so that they know, okay, well, there was a reason that they said, keep it at $50,000 a year, and then that will translate down the line from us over future years. I want to remind everybody that there was 2 or 3 categories, depending on how we look at it. One was facade and signage, and then one was equipment. Most of the examples, I believe facade and signage were kind of bulked together.
Put a copy.
Okay, so we have a copy of
Of
that page. Okay. That was on, yeah, it's just all of these.
All of these.
Yep, every single one's a little different. Everybody does it a little bit differently, and we don't know what their budgets are, and so it's a little bit difficult for us to compare ourselves to these other cities, because they might be working with $2.5 million a year, whereas we're working with $200,000 a year. We've done some projects here in the past that are in this category, and we didn't really have a lot of direction on how to do them, right? And so I think that this is to say, okay, if somebody comes to us with a sign request, this is how we do it, right? And this is what we're looking for. And
The last one we done was the sign one.
it was a sign one. And Chad, I think, told us, the facade and sign one is a little more loose. It's not as tied to jobs and tied to creation. It's a little easier to acquire, but also it's less money, and we need to treat it as less money. What I did notice in a lot of these, and I think is a good idea, is none of these are like 100% pay it for the applicant. Most of them are 50-ish%, possibly 60. And I like that idea because that means that the business owner has skin in the game. You're willing to come up with half. We're here to help you, but we're also not here to hand out all of our money, right?
Yeah, and it gives them commitment from their side too. Helps us with them because they're committing that they're going to pay this amount, we'll pay this amount.
That's right. And if a business can come and prove that they can also spend the $5,000, then we know that's a stronger business. They have better financials, they have a better foundation. We don't have to worry about them going out of business in 6 months because they couldn't afford the $5,000. And I think that's important, and that's a way that we can kind of look over our investments to make sure that they last. So that's one thing that I had on my notes of us having a max matching percentage. And so let's kind of talk about that. My gut is 50%, but I'm open to hearing why we should or shouldn't do that.
I agree with 50%. I believe business owners coming in, that's like an incentive to say, oh, I need, for example, if we do equipment, and I got to buy this equipment, but the EDC is willing to do 50% of it. That helps them in the long run, that they don't have to put so much money up front to start a new business.
Sure.
I think it's a marketing tool by itself, to be honest with you, to come to Manvel.
And also that at that point, it helps us with the clawback if they don't, that certain deals ain't, with less money that we're actually giving them, the clawback side of it would change. Because it's based on the dollar amount, right, Bobby?
Well, capital improvements on the dollar amount, that's why equipment wouldn't really fit for that. Equipment would be tied to jobs, or there's a job training category too that we did for the school district. Or is it the college or the school district? One of the, yeah. So there's so many different categories, it's kind of hard to say that, but generally equipment is not something a sign or some capital expenditure would under the statute, but it's harder to do equipment unless it's tied to not the capital improvement numbers you're putting into the project, but the people, the jobs.
The job at that point.
Yeah, so to Bobby's point, let's stick to just sign and facade for this, and then for equipment, we will have kind of a separate set of rules that will make sure that we check the
And
boxes.
it's not necessarily for equipment. You would just say, hey, you've demonstrated you're going to have 25 jobs that you created. We're giving you a grant. You can almost like just say, spend it however you want, but it's because we want you to locate here rather than Alvin or Pearland. We want you to choose Manvel, so therefore, we're going to give you an incentive grant to come here instead.
I have a question. So I went and had one of the truck service here at Grease Monkey and got to meet Gabriella over there and, was talking to her a little bit about what we're doing. And she and I were talking, and I know this is something we've mentioned before, but the idea of helping to support local business, getting like one of the billboards that we have here in town. And so that was something that I wanted to bring up and see what y'all's thoughts were. Obviously, it's not as concrete of an investment like putting in a sign, but I just thought it was a cool idea that maybe, once a year or so that we, potentially even have, the different businesses put in applications for a specific thing like this, where it could be, something we look at and figure out how to judge, who the quote winner might be of this sort of thing. And just what that might look like as far as how much we're willing to put towards something like that, if it was $5,000 a year or whatever the case may be. I think that's something that could really, help our local businesses and help them see how we're doing what we can to support them.
Can we spend money for just basic advertising?
Like an advertising grant would be what that would be?
That's a tough one. I'm trying to think of which one of the categories that would fit in.
Devil's advocate, I have a couple of things with billboards specifically. If you're changing them out a lot, there's a lot of upfront cost to get a new billboard put up. So if we were doing it for one business a month or something like that, there'd be probably more cost than putting one billboard up and leaving it up. And I haven't got a price on a billboard in a
12
long
grand,
time.
like a month.
12 grand a month.
Yeah.
So it's not really cost effective, I don't think, billboards specifically. Digitally, I think there's probably some better options. And I know our chambers are good about that. It's probably something we might want to partner with the chamber and see, if there's ways that we can work with them to highlight, make sure that we're highlighting a Manvel business in some way. Maybe it's on EDC's Facebook page that we don't have at this moment right now, but maybe we get something like that, right? That's free. I mean, honestly, if we can just get people to follow it. I like where your head's at and the direction that you're going with it. I don't know that billboard specifically would maybe be the answer because it's so expensive and our budget is not real big, but I do like the idea of helping with advertisement for small businesses in the city.
Could the EDC partner with the city on a digital monument sign out front that scrolls through advertising for businesses? Is that?
The city's not, giving it to the city's not really giving it for economic development.
Okay.
Could they put their own monument
Yeah.
sign?
Yeah. Can that be done?
Again, looking through the category, are we creating jobs? Are we giving to our capital investment to a business? Are we, how are we furthering economic development?
I think it's advertising for local shopping and sales tax growth. Aren't we wanting to promote sales tax and jobs?
I mean, you're thinking like a changeable digital message board or in the middle of like the highway or what? I mean,
Yeah, like
Like
here, yeah.
on city property.
I mean, we don't have a monument sign that
Like
advertises for the city.
Financials, They just put one up.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Dweezia?
Mm-hmm.
They have
Or I
it.
don't know how you
I don't
say
know,
it,
I was
but
just asking.
yeah.
It's nice.
I mean,
I think this is an idea that we continue to look into. I think it could be something that EDC can play a role in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I had inquired about getting, billboard for various things. And, from Clear Channel, I'm seeing, 4-week rates at $700, $900, all the way up to $2,500 per month.
It's like
So-
an 8x4 piece of plywood or 4x2.
Uh,
My brother-in-law works for Clear Channel.
yeah, I'm looking at 14 foot by 48 foot.
Is that like on Highway 6 with that
Yeah.
amount of traffic?
Yeah, just right here. All I
Yeah.
wanted was specifically in Manvel. I think the $10,000 number, from what I was looking at, would have been like more of like a 6-month thing.
Yeah.
And so what I was imagining was, like I said, if we put like $5,000, if that was like half of what the business would be paying, whether they want that to be a 3-month thing or, 6-month.
Does that include the artwork or is that just to rent the billboard?
The billboard.
It's a lot of
Not
money.
100% sure.
I think that's just going to be a board.
Yeah, so, I mean, if it was something that we felt, having the desire to do as far as like an advertising specific thing, if not, obviously not worth entertaining, but if of the $50,000, we thought, 10% of that might be supporting our local businesses already that are here, I don't know, I think that would be a cool thing.
Well, I mean, just to clarify the focus, originally the statute was for job training. That was the way that all started, industrial pretty much, and job training and grants for that. Then it got into targeted infrastructure, when you're targeting certain areas. So water, wastewater, streets, that sort of thing was the infrastructure to basically create commercial, which what perfect example is the sewer line down Highway 6. That would fit in the statute perfectly. And then you can do, improvements, and that's the word that we kind of use for, well, if they're using a capital, expenditure to improve the business's site, which is the facade or the sign, we'll say that's considered under the definition of improvements. So that's kind of what we're doing, like, basically on their site, not to do something on a billboard or just to help them advertise generally or help the city advertise generally. I think we're kind of going a bit out of the lane there. So, and again, I mean, the number one thing really we could do is infrastructure, because the more areas we can open up for commercial activity, especially with the new comp plan underway right now, which areas are going to be or should be designated commercial. Like PD&Z Monday night, we had a gas station come out. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't really fit right now. But if the comp plan comes out at the end of the year and says, this area down Del Bello, it should be extended for commercial, they just have no utilities, then that area could be something you look at. You could look at going with infrastructure up Masters 1128 to further economic development and commercial activity, because a lot of businesses, their biggest barrier when they come and says, is there utilities on the site? Nope. Okay, well, we're out. So anyway, those are kind of the way the statute, I thought it was just helpful to kind of like how it developed and what it's really designed for. And then some of our grants go kind of more into not into the gray area, but into the definition of improvements for the site that we do. And then there's a lot of other specific special categories. And that's why we use the school district for the job training one. And there's some other stuff like for parks and things like that. So,
And another thing too, when we invest in their facilities, that also raises their property taxes. There is some return on investment to the city from putting that money into their building and making it nicer. If we're just strictly speaking about from a financial standpoint. And I will say too, to Bobby's point, I'll just kind of sum up my notes on what I was thinking for today, but facade and signage, equipment, and infrastructure are really where we need to probably laser focus at this moment. The facade and signage, that's kind of a small thing, I think, in the big scheme of things. We want to help where we can. I don't think that's where our best return on investment is anyway. The same thing with an advertising grant. I think it's a great idea if we've got a bunch of money and we're looking to just get as wide as we can and have a huge swath. But because we have such limited funds, we've got to really laser focus on what the most return on our money is going to be. Great idea, but I don't think that that's going to fit into the box of getting, to the nitty gritty of creating jobs and driving sales tax. One thing I do want to bring up on this stuff is, we didn't really talk about it, but are we only catering to new businesses, or are we also offering this for existing businesses? Our sign deal that we did recently was with an existing business. Are we going to continue to make that available to them, to existing businesses, or is this something that we're going to try to cater to only new businesses coming to town, because that is where you get the most bang for your buck? Right now, that business is already producing, they're in existence. Is having a sign going to jump it so high up that it's worth putting money into?
And that's a thin line, because if, like with the gym over there was no advertising. They had no sign, no nothing.
Right.
And it's been so many different things through that building. I mean, when I first moved out here, that's where my cleaners was at. So, and it's been a lot of things since then, several different gyms. A feed store, it's been an insurance office, it's been a lot of things. So it's a thin line there of, some signage will help even with businesses existing, but they're not really being able to promote their business out there because people drive past it. And I drove past it. The only reason I finally figured out it was a gym because they had the sandwich board sign set out there saying, that it's there, and it's kind of like, okay. Yep. So it's a thin line. Yes, there's some of the businesses maybe that's well established already and has some signage, and they come for it. It's kind of like, well, you're already there. But the businesses that's getting started and coming to us after they're in 6 months, a year, and they're still surviving, but would the signage help them grow the business and get us more tax dollars?
I think signage would always help grow businesses, and I think we can reach out to new business, and you always want to keep the old businesses because they were there first, not like there'll be jealousy or competition, but it helps, the new ones, the old ones realize that they're not, they're still existing. So people can come to them. Like you said about MaxFit, now that some of the signage is up, it looks really good. And then I look next door to what she's about to finish with the health and everything. And it's like the two of that area now to me is lit up. It's not
Yes.
vacant and dead like when I first moved here. So, okay, thank you.
Hey, so while I've got it up, I wanted just to read you guys what one of the categories, the one that we probably use the most, what we can use it for. And again, I'm trying to kind of marshal it through to make sure we got through. It says, the expenditure of funds found by the board to be required or suitable for infrastructure necessary to promote or develop new or expanded business. So it covers new and the expanding existing businesses. Limit to streets and roads, rail spurs, water and sewer utilities, electric utilities or gas utilities, drainage, site improvements. And that's the one that we use for things like the facade and the sign under the definition of site improvement, and related improvements, which kind of has to be linked to. So if it's a capital expenditure on the building or project, that's in that, that gets a little bit murkier. And telecommunications and internet improvements. So those are kind of the critical infrastructure or target infrastructure for new or expanded businesses. And that's just one of the categories, and there's several more, but that's the one we probably use the most. So give you an idea of what.
Sure. And I'm in complete agreement that we should offer this stuff to new and existing. I don't think that it should only be new, so.
Just make it a more points.
Which one's better?
I mean, new is that's what we're trying to get, make that worth 10 points and existing worth 5. And then if it comes down to 2, we have scoring system that's kind of fair across the board.
But we are in agreement that new and existing, this should be available to, correct?
Expanding, I think you should say expanding.
Expanding.
Yeah, 'cause
So
they're
does that mean that you have to show us that you're expanding in some way? This one's real loose, remember, we don't
Yeah.
really tie it to a whole lot of metrics.
Are we tied to that, Bobby? Like, when it says new or expanding, where are you reading that out of? Is that where we can allocate funds?
This is one of those sections where the use of funds are allowed,
Yeah,
and it's very specific.
yeah, I think we.
And there's other ones too. So every time you say, can we use it for that?
Yeah.
You almost have to go and think about the different things, and then you have to probably pull out the book and read through about 8 pages worth of, and some of them are all bracketed for certain cities or certain things of a certain population, and, certain things that if you're, next to the coast, and, there's all these little bracketed use things, so it's a little bit more difficult than that, but, anyway, new and expanded would be just for that one of the streets, roads, water, utility, that kind of thing. Now, if there's other things like for, parks, or if you're, like, say, buying water supply facilities, or like we have some BRA water, we probably could use EDC money for that, to buy a water supply. That's under a different category, and that has nothing to do with new or expanded businesses. It's basically on its own. If you're gonna have water supplies, I guess they assume that's gonna help, further economic development. So that's another one of the categories.
And some of those categories and things change with the size the city becomes, correct?
Well, yeah, that's what I said, some of those bracketed population amounts kick in, and a lot of them are for the bigger cities. But
Bobby, where are you reading that?
that's the Texas Local Government Code. There's a couple of chapters, 501, 502, 503, and 505. Most of these are out of 501 or 505.
So make no mistake, you guys already have, and the intent is to update this project application. So you've got a couple different things you've got to discuss this evening.
Okay.
The project application can be for new businesses because they're typically going to come in with those infrastructure requests. They need water, sewer, drainage, big things different than facade. A brand-new business bet to be able to put a front on their building. If they can't, maybe that's not the right business. But the facade piece for this, for that little piece of grant, if you read through these different cities and how they're doing it, they're matching funds. So if you take the strip center where the laundromat is, not the prettiest strip center, you can entertain an option with them if they're willing to spend some dollars and really pretty that up. I don't know if y'all recall Mark Lowe's business down 6th, the Manvel Retail. Used to not be very pretty, and now it's a very nice exterior building. Same as where the doctor's office is and the gym. You know, these are that kind of project to take Alvin did a big downtown facade grant project to help pretty years back their downtown area. And so you saw some of those buildings getting some nice facelifts. That's a whole separate little pot of money, separate from your regular project request of a brand-new business coming in, like the hair salon or Richard Rayner's project. That's a brand-new business project, and you guys have funds, and then you'll set specifications on those based off of this front page on how many jobs would be created for that brand-new business. Let's give them a 1 to a 10 rating, a whatever to whatever rating. So you got a couple different discussions that you're talking about.
So if we just keep it in the sign and facade, because it's kind of the easiest, the loosest, the smallest money amount, we all agree that we should not pay 100%, correct? That we should, are we in agreement that maybe up to 50%? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Sounds fair.
on
I think
our
that's
application page where it's there, we need to flip it.
So I was thinking up to $5,000 out of we would bring $5,000. So basically a $10,000 sign, we would bring $5,000. If they had a $15,000 sign, we'd still bring $5,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is kind of my thought. Completely open for discussion, though.
I think that's pretty fair across the board. You don't run into issues with somebody wanting to put in a $200,000 sign and we have to give them 50 or, just cap it.
Cap it at that, and like I said, that the way it is on our application now, we need to flip that
On which page? Oh.
on the application page.
We'll get to
3.
that on the next agenda item.
Oh.
So make a note on that, and when we get to the changes for the application, we will go in and talk about those individually. Okay, so we're 50% up to 5,000. And then,
Some of the other things, some of them have limits for a timeframe. Do you want to
okay, so
discuss maybe a timeframe?
do we want to have a time frame for which they have to complete the project?
Yes.
Yes, we have, they need one.
And do we think that should be 6 months, 3 months?
It'll be item specific,
We generally do a reimbursement program, right? So it's not until they get it done anyway. So if they don't ever do it, they don't ever get our money. But we do need to have probably an expiration date on that so that that's no longer restricted or committed money.
Right, I say, because
and
then
it just goes back
we can
into
get
our-
that money back into our fund that we could use. So, yeah, I think 3 months is enough for any project.
3 months.
What is the
on
current?
On the sign.
Current timeline.
You don't really have
It's different.
businesses of it. And
Ooh, I would say 6 months.
6 months
Strictly
completion.
because I know the signs require engineering and electrical and underground and permitting for Centerpoint and all that stuff, that the ball takes a little time to get going.
We
Like
can
max 6
also, I think they,
It would be, yes, but then on some of the smaller ones, when it don't like
Yeah,
we done for
if
the
it's a
gym, I
replacement,
mean,
it'll go
it's.
quick, yeah.
I'm sure that maybe we could write in something that an extension could be requested, but it
Yeah.
would have to be approved by the board. Could we do that? And so we'll put a hard number on it, let's say 6 months, and then if it's not done in 6 months, they have to come back before the board to
Yeah, that
get
sounds
an
fair.
extension.
And sorry, guys, I didn't catch the answer to that. So there's not currently a timeline at all that's required to be done by?
So not in the current project, application. You
Okay.
guys are project-based, so up until this point, someone would come in, ask for it, and then in the.
Performance agreement, it's
yeah,
in the performance
that's where
agreement,
you would
that'll
put
say,
those kinds
if you
of-
don't do it within 3 years, yeah, we claw back and you have to give us your money back or that kind
Okay,
of thing, so.
got it. Okay, that makes sense.
So another thing that I saw a couple examples too in this section was that they had to get more than one quote for that sign rather
Yeah,
than
I think
them
that's-
going to one.
That's reasonable, yes.
That ensures we're not just giving our money to one
Yeah,
sign
that
company.
they
for all
ain't
that,
got their buddy and jacking the price up, and then
Right.
they're getting the 5,000 from us, and they're paying $2,000 at the end.
Okay, so would we say 2 quotes? 3
yeah.
quotes?
Minimum of 2.
Minimum of 2?
Yeah.
Prefer 3.
Just say
Everybody
prefer
does
3.
Yeah, I prefer, yes, 3.
Yeah.
I say
3?
I think
I
three's
think
pretty
that's
standard.
I
Okay.
think 3
Yeah.
is.
We do our homework and make sure they're legit.
Tammy. Sick 'em, Tammy.
Okay. So when we do this, is the limit facade and sign, is that 5,000 for facade and sign, or is that 5,000 for facade and 5,000 for sign?
Are you
So when
saying combining them for one person?
So if one
you did-
project is coming through and they say, I want a sign and I want to put brick on the front or rock or whatever.
Call it site improvements and it fits the statute, and then it could even be something that maybe you hadn't even thought of yet, that isn't a sign and isn't a facade, but still could be a site improvement.
Oh, the big blow-up gorilla they put on the top of the building.
So if we put site improvement rather than sign and facade, it would kind of encompass
It would fit the statute.
all of those things?
Yeah.
And then it would be 5,000 total, no
Yeah.
matter what the project cost would be.
I mean, I
Or
kind of like
board.
the idea of 5,000 being specifically for the sign and kind of leaving us up a little flexibility on facade type stuff. You know, because if it's something that we really agree would be a big benefit to the look and, you know, and feel.
Could we do sign and then site improvement separately? I know sign kind of falls into site improvement, but could we do
Yeah, sign would be a subset
of site improvement?
We can do it on a case-by-case basis. This is just them at the beginning. If they have something that's more than what we're saying, they can come up with the reasons and put it on the application.
I mean, we don't have a lot of money to work
If your
with.
grant
Yeah.
policy
You have
is
to
that the only
remember
We
sign
can do 10
improvements
at
you'll
$5
allow
grand, or
are
we can do
facades and
one at
signs,
50.
then that's your grant policy.
I mean, personally, my feeling is with the application, the more kind of flexibility we put in there, you know, especially for future years and things like that, and get really specific on our scorecard, you know, of how we're considering whether or not we approve things. I mean, that's kind of what my initial impression, thinking about putting ourselves in a box.
Okay, so if we did 50% up to 10,000, that doesn't mean we have to do 50%. As a board, we know that that was really if somebody was bringing multiple site improvements to the table. But if you're only bringing the sign, then as a board, we can say, we're only going to do 25% on this one instead of doing like if we're going to set a limit at $5,000 kind of internally as a board, and they only bring us a sign improvement, then we know, okay, we're only really going to go 5,000 for a sign. But if they say we want to do a sign and we want to do stucco on the front, then as a board, we know we can go up to the $10,000 for that. But what that doesn't do is set the table for other boards down the line when it's not us. And so it really doesn't check that box for me of saying these are the guidelines that we run by. So it's difficult. It's hard for us to put it in a box. But like Bobby said, if our grant program says up to $5,000, then we're kind of stuck at $5,000, right? Or can we say we'll do whatever, no matter what the grant program says?
I mean, we have that flexibility now. When someone comes in, we look at it and kind of adjust to what we feel is the appropriate incentive. I mean, some guidelines are fine. I mean, if you had a policy of, you know, you want to do half on you and half for existing to, you know, expand businesses, I mean, something like that. But when you get into certain amounts and we get into, you know, very certain improvements, sure enough, next week you're going to get an application that's great, but it's not going to fit your, you know, what your parameters, so you may have to adjust those or.
But we can do that, though, correct? If
Yeah,
if
bring
we
it back
really
to the
like
board,
that.
and
Yeah.
just, you know, you have
Yeah.
to keep adjusting your parameters.
Yeah.
you might want to do more to just the way of goals rather than numbers and specifics. If your goals are, to, do 50% of a matching grant and, target commercial activity, special attention given to certain areas, which might be ones that aren't served by city utilities or something where you can help with that. I'm just throwing these out. There may be certain parameters that you want that are more goals than, $5,000 or only signs or facades. If it's any site improvement that works, maybe, you'd want the flexibility to review that.
So I think initially, right now, you've not had anybody ever come for a facade improvement. I think the intent is getting confused between the difference between being able to do a project and going out and soliciting somebody or these eyesore areas to improve. It's a match, so these businesses that aren't looking to improve their facade necessarily are going to have to cough up a good amount of money as well to benefit from this program. And on the other hand, you can change this year after year. You can start here and maybe get somebody, and then maybe as your coffers grow, because sadly, keep in mind, the intent would be to find industry to come. This isn't where you want your money necessarily spent. This is a good faith effort to show the community you're trying to help. But at the end of the day,
It's not our goal.
your goal is industry and
New
really bringing in
business.
some prime, large employees.
And that's why I
Five
lean
days, yeah,
towards
not
the
gonna-
$5,000 max
Yeah.
still. Even though not everybody's going to fit into that box, I still think that at least as a board, we're saying we really don't want to devote a whole lot of money to those kind of projects,
Yeah.
right?
No, I agree.
Plus, it puts us in less of a position for feeling like, like we're hurting anybody's feelings, because we've already kind of set that expectation. That's fair.
And I think that if, Rabina, to your point, if a small business comes in, this really isn't where we want to put the money for the small business. We want to put it in equipment and infrastructure to get them. So I don't think that we're leaving small businesses out of it. I just think we're kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, this really isn't where we want the money to go to. We want it to go to equipment to produce jobs. If you buy a new piece of equipment, you got to hire 5 people because of that piece of equipment. That's more the kind of project that I would like to see personally.
I would too, because we need infrastructure. That is one of the main things when I got on this board, we talked about. And much was done, but not as much as, that was talked about. And that's kind of frustrating. And I know when I was at AWBD, which is the Association of Water Board, I don't know, but they're expanding more and talking about infrastructure in the state of Texas and grants that are available to the cities, because they know how difficult it is to try, especially small towns, and you don't have that much, revenue coming in. But I'm going to bring some of that back at our next meeting, because I thought that the conference I just came from, that's what they talked about, and it kind of took everybody back because they're coming out of their, it's not even a shell, just making known to us, to our city. So, okay.
Jason, how do you feel about making the amount of the $50,000 a percent of our budget so that it grows with our tax money, and then the next board they inherit that percent, you know what I'm saying? It changes with the more money we have, the more money we can give to new business, kind of, whatever that percentage is.
It'd be a larger percentage of our budget because we're not coming all directly out of the budget. And so, it would be around 25% of our, well, I guess if we're counting $800,000, it's not. If we're already counting that we're pulling money out of our fund balance, and that's part of our budget, then we could do that and it would be fine. But every year that budget is accounting for taking $800,000 out of the fund balance that we have,
Okay.
right? And so that puts us at, would we have about $1 million budget with the 800? Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's $500,000 is the transfer in from the fund balance. And then 177,000, we're bringing in from interest income right now, but that's going to go down as we move money out of our accounts and interest rates drop.
So what this would look like, when you guys come up with your application and your total, when it comes time for your budget, you guys would have a line item that would be a facade, or, I'm sorry, site improvement grant. And with that, you'd have a dollar amount, which, let's say you did 25,000. That means you could do five $5,000 grants
Yeah.
for this purpose. And that's where the number of grants that you could do per year come up. And then, of course, if one ends up having to be tweaked for a different amount, you just, as long as
Adjust
you don't go over
Yeah,
that
sure.
amount.
And, you know, at the end of the day, because we're on a tight budget, at some point, the door will just close and we've done everything
Yeah.
that we're available to do for this year. We can't keep spending money that we're not bringing in, right? If we're doing 5,000 each and we have a $25,000 or a $50,000 budget, then we can do 10 of them, right? And then after 10, come next year, you know, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? First come,
Do that
first
and let
serve,
the
right?
budget grow with it.
Right. Okay. So let's try to hammer this $5,000 thing. Are we going to try to keep it to $5,000, or do we think
Yes.
we want more flexibility than that?
I think to start, we try to get as many people as we can. If that means a lower amount, then let's do that
Okay.
instead of trying to.
Because not
Get
all of
somebody
them's going to be
big
up to the
manager.
5,000. There will be some that will be lower.
So will we say $5,000 or $50,000 into our budget for site improvement grants at up to $5,000 each? Is that what we're
Want to
landed
go
on?
that many or just 5?
It was
up to
What
you.
he just said, up to.
I mean, if it depends on what our budget number is going to, I mean, we get to make it up, so whatever we want it to be.
So
That's good starting out.
for this upcoming year, do we plan on doing the feasibility study? Is that coming out of this coming year's?
I think we'll probably have more information on that after the 160 acre planning, because in my mind, I think it needs to go on the 160 acres. And if they're ready to move forward with that, then it's something probably we partner in with them and put our minds together with council of how to incorporate it there, instead of us finding a different place to put it.
Yeah.
I think it should go there.
Thanks.
Yeah, our money's already going there anyway, right?
Man,
Yeah.
because that's 67,000 out of the budget.
Out of that first year budget. Okay. 50% up to $5,000,
Yep.
10 of them.
Move down.
10 of them. 6-month completions, possible extensions if they come and ask, minimum of 3 quotes per project.
Are we reviewing any of this, or is it going straight to the city? Like if they're doing a sign, it all has to be approved? They can't-
Everything comes through
Okay.
approval here.
Understood.
We can-
For the grant. The sign side of
Right.
it goes
Yeah.
through
So
the
we
city.
don't accidentally give permission for something that may not meet the city's, you
No,
know?
No.
They would
project-
have to work with that side of it on the city and by all their ordinances and codes and all that.
Okay.
We would, if we was to approve
We need to
the
put-
amount of money for them, but they still has to get the sign approved through the
Because
city.
I think they may confuse that we are the city, you know, even though we're not.
Yeah.
We know we're not. They need to still.
No, we tell them on here that
Exactly.
everything that
They
you're
know.
supposed to have, yeah.
Simple.
So the city staff will let them know everything that goes behind the scenes with the city.
Yeah.
Before they come.
Yep, separately from us. Okay, anything else on site improvement grants? If not, let's move to equipment grants.
Excuse me.
Okay, so the next one was equipment. Like Bobby said earlier, this one's a little more tied to creating jobs and, or retaining.
By the
jobs.
way, which we forget about that component, which helps the existing, we had that with the donut shop.
Like I said, the donut shop and the grease trap.
Yep, yep. Same thing, I saw a lot of these that are match, or percent matches, they're not 100%. A lot of them are still in the same 50% range, 60% range, 40% range. I think there might have been some 75%, I don't remember. I still think that's a good way for us to do it, to make sure that the applicant has skin in the game, that they're also putting up their own money, and, you know, we're not just handing out money for them to do it all off of our dime. We do ask in our application now about creating jobs, how many it'll create. Here's some of the questions that I just kind of wrote down as far as with the equipment. Well, no, these really aren't just specific to equipment, so I guess we have to tie it to job creation or job retention. We have to decide what that number is. Equipment to me is a little bit more expensive usually when I think of equipment. I think our number needs to be a little bit bigger for equipment. You know, the hair salon probably isn't, that's on the lower end of equipment kind of cost, but if you have, I'm trying to think of a business that's going to, you know, buy a piece of equipment that would grow their business. Usually equipment, I think like, you know, $200,000 or something, $100,000, you know.
Like the automotive deal and stuff, that car lifts and all that, the good ones ain't cheap.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not cheap. And so, you know, I guess we have to decide how we're going to do that and still where those limits are. I was thinking 50% up to $10,000 or $20,000. It's still probably not going to be a huge percent of the equipment cost. But again, it's a good faith effort that MEDC is trying to help you get to where you're going. It is still, you know, essentially free money to grow your business.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Thoughts on that? Go ahead, Chris.
So whenever I think about the EDC making, you know, giving some support for somebody, you know, buying a kind of major asset like that, I wonder if, say, the company goes out of business. Obviously, if somebody files bankruptcy, all of their, you know, people they owe money are basically out of luck. But I just wonder if we were contributing to something that was $100,000, would there be any way for us to have
A recourse? Yeah.
yeah, like if they went out of business, where we would have, you know, any entitlement
Repo.
to that piece of equipment? What do you call that? Collateral.
Repo.
It would be
Repo.
collateral in any way? Is that a thing?
Not on bankruptcy.
No, and really the collateral is,
Trustee, bankruptcy trustee.
Well, maybe not if they go
Different.
bankrupt. I mean, like I said, I understand bankruptcy, you know. But if they did decide they were, you know, in a way that we wouldn't be able to normally claw back if the business closed or something like that, you know, I guess that would be collateral.
Well, most of our clawback's going to be on job creation, if that's the component that we have to oversee, because if it's equipment, we do it on a reimbursement basis. So if they don't put it in, they don't get the money. If they put it in, they get the money. And then after that, it's kind of done. Now, you're right, if the business folds 2 years later and they have a nice piece of equipment they can turn around and sell, I guess that's part of, you know, you have to, maybe that's why when we evaluate them, maybe we do ask some questions about, okay, who are you, what are you doing? Maybe poke around a little bit about you know, what's the business like? Are they solvent kind of thing? Maybe we maybe need to pay more attention to that, frankly. You bring up a good point.
and we do
Like a
ask,
lien kind of thing is almost, I think, maybe what I'm thinking about.
we do ask for financials and, you know, financials for the last 3 years. And generally, I would say in the projects that I've seen come across the board, we get pretty in-depth into, you know, what are you doing and how are you doing it? And I think as a board, we get to kind of make that decision if we don't get a good feeling about this.
Swim Academy didn't work out. There was some hesitancy there about whether she could get her financing and all that stuff, and it ended up not panning out. So we just, you know, we move slow and kind of meticulously as we can, but, I mean, the donut shop could close tomorrow and there's a new grease trap there, but it might benefit somebody who comes in after them. too,
Exactly.
so you never
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
They're probably not gonna dig that out, or maybe.
It's not going, at least it's not going into the drain now.
That's right.
They know what it is after 10, 20 years.
And I think if we have a scorecard that we're doing for projects, then that will kind of help us to discern whether or not we feel like this is the right project for us. We always get to say no, you know, we don't have to say yes
Yeah.
to everything. And I think knowing that our budget is as tight as it is, we really do have to discern and look into these projects and make sure that we think that they're going to be viable long-term. And I think we would do a pretty good job of that as a board.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
We think about it.
Yeah, we'll do our research on them, and people talk, small town, we're gonna know, we're gonna know something. Something's gonna come up at some point.
Just ask Tammy.
Yeah, Tammy will tell us whatever we need to know. Okay, so let's go back to talking about max amounts of money. So are we in agreement that we 50% on that as well?
Could they be combined? And I say that in the documents I sent y'all, looking at like the city of, I can never pronounce it,
Seguin?
Seguin. They have it listed under equipment upgrade, and sometimes when we think of equipment, we think of saws and that kind of equipment. But theirs were improvements including but not limited to replacing electrical, wiring, plumbing, masonry repair, foundation stabilization, fire sprinkler and fire alarm system, HVAC systems. So it looks like their equipment is more based off of that
Capital,
kind
yeah.
of category. But they have in their application facade improvements, sign improvements, site improvements, and other real property improvements. And then in their packet, they define everything, talk about what the guidelines are, and then in the application, they actually have a scoring sheet. So all of these I attached to the email that I had sent everyone. What I'll do is I can pull out some, so you're not overwhelmed with a ton of things to have to look at. I can pull out some that looked, kind of caught my eye and had good scoring sheets and had good groupings. And like I said, this one kind of puts all of it together where you could do your equipment and site as one grant type. And the applications, there's a couple different ones that we can pull a little information from this, a little information from that one, different from your original project, new business application, something geared more towards this project. Another one was the City of Forney. Theirs was a good one as well, that kind of combined the different pieces in it.
Would we be able to do different amounts, though, for different pieces in that? Like if we wanted to do more for equipment than site improvement, for
Yeah.
instance, could we say up to $10,000 for equipment, $5,000 for site improvement? Both are 50%, so, I mean, both of them fall into the 50% mark, but
What if they qualify for both?
that.
More power to them. We can still say no, but yeah, we could consider.
If I get 100% then, you get 50%.
50% of one and 50% of the other?
50% under site improvement?
It depends if we really want them here, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like there's probably some projects that would fall into that category that we would
Yeah.
agree. There's probably plenty that wouldn't, but I
Yeah.
do think we want to have the flexibility to say, yes, we want to give money to both, right?
Especially if they bring in jobs, like 10 jobs or so, it's kind of like,
And is the question included where we're asking them whether or not their receipt of this grant will prevent them from being able to move forward with the project?
Yes, I think that was part of the deal we talked
Yes.
about before. We got to know that part. And that's a very important part. Are they going somewhere else?
When we talked to Chad, he said we would lean more towards the ones that can do it without us, knowing that they're strong enough to be able to make it, rather than the ones that are relying on our $10,000, because then they don't have a great foundation and they're telling you that, right?
Reverse psychology.
Yep.
Is that what Chad said, though? Because you probably right, but I thought he was saying the opposite, that if
No.
somebody can do it without us, then let them. The lady with the salon, I thought that the fact that she was going to do it without us, I thought we said, oh, okay, well, good.
But come back after we get through with our plan and we still might give you some money.
No, his thinking was that if you're strong enough to be able to do, if the project won't stop because we don't give you money, then that's a better project to invest in because it's probably going to last longer
Right.
than if they're waiting for us to. Now, I think there's also a difference if they're waiting for $5,000 versus waiting for $350,000 to bring infrastructure underneath Highway 6 for them, right? That, I think we're talking about two
Two different type
types of
projects.
projects, right?
Yes.
That's more in the infrastructure part which we'll get to in a second, that is its own, can of worms depending on the project size. Yeah.
I can put something together for an application and leave blanks for fill in the gaps for the next meeting, if that would make it a little bit easier. I can go through all of these different examples that he sent us for the different ideas, and as well as y'all look to make sure if there's something you like, we can incorporate it in there. But I can draft something and then leave blanks where the dollar amounts I can leave blank, the up tos, that kind of thing, the numbers. And then it might make it a little bit easier to see something in writing in front of you, more specific to what's kind of been discussed this evening.
And also something that we haven't talked about yet is when we got the budget from Chad, the $15,000 was for both the site improvement and the equipment. And so if we're going to say $50,000, is that $50,000 for our site improvement that we just talked about, as well as anybody that's applying for equipment? Because if that's the case, then we're going to have even a smaller pool of projects that we're going to be able to take on. We might be able to take on 5 total projects of whatever kind they might be, either site improvement or equipment. Right?
Yeah, and we're about to add industrial or
Well, infrastructure.
infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, infrastructure. Infrastructure is different to me, though. I put that in its own category, that we would dip into fund balance for the right projects, the projects that are going to improve more than just one piece of property, or that are going to open the door up for us to develop a whole side of a road, right? Like, those are the kind of things.
Infrastructure stays with the city pretty much.
It does, and it allows us to develop land that right now is undevelopable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Undevelopable without our assistance or without getting those wet utilities. Because a developer that's putting in a project, if they look at that and it's $500,000, that kills the project for a developer, because they're just looking at dollars and cents, right? They're going to say, it's not a viable project, we won't make any money, I can't fall on that sword for everybody else in the future. But that's, I think, where we fill in that gap and say, okay, we'll fall on that sword so that now all of you on that side of the road,
Don't
or all
go
of you in
down
this
there,
city
build here.
block, can do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so 50% max on equipment. Let's try to just get that locked out, and so we can move on to infrastructure. Are we thinking 10,000? Are we thinking 20,000? 5,000 for it also? I mean, do we have thoughts on where that should land?
I think it needs to be above the 5,000 when it comes to equipment.
Yeah, I think 10 sounds good.
Or 15.
We're running out of money quick,
Yeah.
Yeah, so. And that's just our max, right? That's what we're putting, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if we said 15,000, that would be a $30,000 project, and then we would be able to come with 15,000, up to 15,000.
That's
We don't
a
have to do
gift,
15,000.
I
Yeah.
think that's.
Okay, so we'll say
very attractive.
50% max up to 15,000. But it has to create jobs, and we're going to have a checklist of things that it has to do. You can't replace your HVAC unit because your workers are.
Well, what if they were threatening to quit because it was hot?
That's a good question. That's a gray area that we're going to have to. I've got 12 workers and they're all quitting if I don't fix this AC unit, and I don't have the money.
I don't know what's going on.
Well,
Just buy
come to the
Daikin
board.
units.
It does fall into the category, so maybe we'll approve it. Okay, I think that is everything for equipment. We can move on to infrastructure. Infrastructure wasn't in our strategic plan from Chad, but I think we all appreciate that infrastructure at this state that we're in as a city is super important. There's a lot of areas that still need it. And so,
A lot.
yeah, we've seen some projects already that have come across the board. There's going to be more. It's hard to put a number on this, in my opinion, because it ranges so much. How much was Corey's Kitchen gas line? Do you remember?
40, I thought, I heard.
Something.
Or was that the Alvin number? It was, yeah.
Okay, so.
It was a good amount.
So 40,000 for something like that. Richard Rayner, $300,000. There's this huge range, and so I don't know that we can really put a number on it.
On infrastructure, you're not going to be able to. It's going to have to be project driven.
But I do think some guidelines on what we think is a good infrastructure project for us to take on. One of the things that we did talk about is it dependent on MEDC funding for the project, the development to even take place. If we don't help, does it kill the project? Do we currently provide utilities to this project already, right? Is it already there and we don't need to do anything and it doesn't really qualify for us? will it feed more than just that one project's property? To me, that's a really big one because I'm willing to put a lot more money into something that's going to feed more than one property.
Right.
You
And
know?
that was part of the deal with Richard's stuff,
Right.
was there was more than just him that's going to benefit. There's land beside it that will benefit from it.
A jobs number, I was looking at that and kind of thinking, is this going to provide 25 or more jobs, right? I think in Rayner's deal, they had 40-something jobs. Those are the type of projects. Are we going to put $350,000 into a project and then they're going to run a coffee shop that's got 8 employees and that's it? Something that we're probably not going to jump through hoops for, right? And so I think that we should probably have some idea of a jobs number that we're all comfortable with on approving those kind of projects. And these are kind of things that are in the application that we're going to see that we can just highlight as they're making the application for us. What is the sales tax generated annually? And would it qualify for any state grants, or would it qualify us for any state grant help? We talked a few times about some of the infrastructure on the east side and how the state could maybe come and take on 90% of the cost if we can find somebody that's ready to move into some of these properties. Those are the kind of things that we want to push for, right? We're gaining big time ground in one project rather than these little projects. And so, I just think we need to leave that one open, but it's something that we need to talk about and make sure that everybody's on the same page of how important the infrastructure piece still is at this stage of the game for us in our city.
It's a major piece. There's lots of property that does not have any infrastructure. So, like you said, when they have to look at the cost of coming here, they have to look at putting in roads and all this. They're not going to look at it.
And I think as the city's comp plan comes together too, we'll have a hand in that, and then we'll kind of know the areas that are lacking and that we're hoping to have commercial presence in. And we can kind of focus a little bit more on those. As a board, we can say, okay, comp plan has this area as light commercial, they're going to need this, how can we help facilitate that and get it to them and make sure that that area develops the way that, we want it to develop.
Yeah, because there's sometimes you're not going to know the jobs it's going to create yet until you get it down there, like we did with, right before I started when we done the sewer line down 6. I mean, at that point, there's no one that could tell you how many jobs is going to be created, but there's going to be a lot, because now you're going to be able to put a lot of businesses down there, and look at the businesses that's come in the past couple of years down 6 because of that.
Okay, so I really don't think there's a lot of action on infrastructure that we need to write down. It's just more of making those points and making sure that we're all on the same page with that for our goals moving forward. Is there anything else on this agenda item? This was the business grant categories and dollar amounts. I think we got
that covered.
pretty close. Or probably not vote on it until we.
There's no action you'll have
So
to take on it.
we won't take any action on it tonight, but I think we have a good outline of the direction that we want to go. And possibly for March, maybe we'll have some documents that we can fill in the blanks, and then maybe we can vote on it. Okay, is everybody good to move on from that one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. We'll move on to item C, which is consideration and possible action to direct staff on proposed updates to the MEDC project application.
So this may be the same as a no action item, more of just some discussion. The one in your packet that looks like this, that is our current project application. The first page of it goes over information on some of our requirements. The second page talks a little bit about the timing, public hearing notice, and kind of the time frame that it takes to get a project before the board, have the public hearing, and how long it takes before they'd actually get their funds. And then the rest of it has to do with what their information, what they're asking for, and then basic questions. The piece that's I would like to ask is, how this came about, let me back up. How this came about was literally, I just looked at a kabillion different project applications for all things EDCs in all states all over, and pulled out things that looked like they'd be good things that our board would want to have information on, and then pulled them all together and the board looked at it. Some things they took off back then, some things they added. The piece that's not added on here is that matrix that Chad included on the page that's got his picture on the bottom of it, kind of that scoring card. So the scoring card is a big piece that this application is missing and that we would want to add. But not sure if y'all had a chance to look through these questions to decide if these questions still suffice and are helpful, or if they're too many questions, or asking too much information or not enough information. Maybe it doesn't need changed. I don't know. But I wanted to give y'all an opportunity, because this has been since Wayne Sabo was the president of the board, and that was back in probably 2008.
When I looked at this, I was looking at the public versus private, and I like the first question, right? But the other two, well, number 2 and number 3 seem like it can be kind of complicated, the way they ask in the question, in my opinion. If it can be a little bit more simpler.
And to add to that, I thought number 4, how would they know the answer to that anyway?
Right.
So if we're asking the applicant to fill out, some of these are more something we would fill out, right? It's more, same thing with the scorecard. I lean towards we would fill the scorecard out based off of their answers on the application rather than,
So, and this piece that you guys are looking at right now, that is your part.
okay, so this is not, they would not fill this
It's not
out.
really a scorecard,
Okay,
but
gotcha.
this is where you guys would ask yourselves these questions. The problem is they're so open-ended.
After page 4,
Yes.
Got you.
That, because it doesn't let you actually give a real score, then it makes everybody's kind of up in the air when you guys are talking about, well, it does, but, okay,
that's where we
this,
gotta work on the scorecard side of this, and
Okay.
that way we ain't gotta ask Bobby every time.
Yeah.
Does this fall into this?
This,
Fall
yeah.
into this? We got more of a guideline to go by, then once we got it all
Takes the
together, we can, hey,
emotions
Bobby,
out
does
of
this
it.
work?
Okay.
but yeah, I'm sorry. This was the criteria that EDC was kind of asking themselves. Does it do this? Yes. Does it do that? No.
Okay.
Well, I think some of the questions on our side should be answered by the applicant then.
Yeah.
Like how many temporary jobs, like just point blank, how many temporary jobs, how many permanent jobs? Like the jobs creation piece, that is something I feel like the applicant very easily would just fill in a blank for us.
Just based on, how did you arrive at that number? too? That's
Mm-hmm.
a telltale question to follow up.
Which is probably what we would do as they're presenting to us, right? We would look at our card and say, okay, well, how did you get 28 jobs?
And also on the very first page, where it's got the, percentages and all that, we need to fix that.
I just put an X through that because I figured everybody should say 100%. If I was filling it out, I'd write 100%. So
Yeah, no,
like,
you
let's not
take the
leave that
100
up to them.
We take the 100 off, but it gives us our 10, 20, 50, but we flip them. On the 10 where it's,
I think, in my opinion, I just think they need to tell us what the cost of the project is, and then we have our own guidelines already. So,
Right.
you know, they're going to get a maximum that they could possibly get out of us. I don't know why you wouldn't do that.
So take off B, C, and D? Is that what you?
no,
Yeah,
A, B, C.
A, B, C, and D. I would just, because right before that, it says the total cost of proposed project. And so I think if we know that, then we know,
We know we're only going to 50%.
Okay, so take all that off.
And what you think about, even though it was for us, but the first question for public versus private? You know, if a company project is coming up in here and it's getting funded privately 100%, like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You trying to use us as a down payment? Like, I think that's a good question to ask them, to make them put that down, to see where their mindset is at.
So move that over to the application?
I think, do y'all think so?
I think, because it answers that question instead of us having to ask them at the end
Yeah.
when we reviewing it before we ever talk to them.
that's definitely something that we want to know.
So Tammy, have you seen anybody request less than 100% on these applications in the past? That you recall? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Well, then maybe we just get rid of the 100%, leave the 50 and 25 and 10, just in case.
Yeah, we can, absolutely. We don't want to leave money on the table if they only want 10%.
But we flip it from the way it says it now. Because now it says the applicant's at 10. We would be at 10, the applicant would be at 90.
Right.
Because we wouldn't want to give them 90, because we don't want to go over 50,
Right.
unless it seems worth it.
So we'll do 10, 25, and 50 and that's what
On
we
our
would
side.
do. Yeah, on our side.
And take the 100 off? Truly, so the 100 is a funny one, because we've had a few want that, and every time I say, that's it, I'm opening a tanning salon if that gets approved, and I am going for 100%.
into business,
And it's great, we can have wine in there, and you name it. That's right.
We're asking what they want. They can want that.
Yeah, that's right.
They're not gonna get it.
It was just a test. We wanted to see what you'd say. You're automatically disqualified if you put 100.
You're out.
I feel like in
What do
the
you give-
past, when we've gotten applications, there has been more than just the one page, though. Do they get this also whenever they get the application?
I give them the whole thing.
Yeah, because I think some of them fill that out. Yeah. I've seen this part filled out.
Primarily because it references for them in the questions, that they look at what you guys are grading on, and that they also include this information, because you're grading on it, in their information they're providing.
So to that point, I would say we don't give them all of these questions. We only give them the pertinent ones that we want to know the answers to, and then the ones that are just for us, we keep separately. Because this would be confusing to me. It's confusing to me as a board member. You know, will public funding for a project unfairly compete unfairly with, yeah, like, we don't even know that, right? Like, I don't understand why that, is really important to us, unless it's something super obvious, and then we're going to know it anyway. Do y'all agree with that? Am I?
No, I
Okay.
totally agree, because
So going through those, just starting at the public versus private, can you tell me which numbers you'd want completely removed, which numbers you want added to the regular application, and which, if there's anything on here you think is more of y'all's board side?
I think number 1
should be added.
should be added to their application.
Okay.
Number 3, maybe.
Will public fund assist.
So does Bobby or anybody know why that question would have been, number 2 would have been included in the first place? Because I imagine there had to have been a reason.
I would think so too, that had come up, or,
So again, yeah.
Yeah, Tammy, put it there.
These were questions that were on a ton of different
Different ones.
applications. And then we did exactly like this, brought it before the board, and for whatever reason, now keep in mind, these don't make much sense to me. Now, Wayne Sabo was also a city manager, not sure if this made perfect sense at that time
Well,
for
so
something he
to me,
was
a public
interested in
job-
knowing.
To me, a public job would be like if a school came up here and asked us to pay for their sign. We might have a problem with that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because our taxes are already paying for
don't get
that
any
sign.
money or-
So I think that's probably why that's what I see public versus private.
I wonder when they say public funding, are they referring to us, right?
Well, yeah, so public jobs and construction would be funded with tax money.
Tax dollars.
So, yeah, basically funded by us, yeah.
Yeah, so if you had, let's say, one kolache store going in, that's completely privately funding all of that, and now here we are giving them the cost for that grease trap, and now it's, giving them a leg up.
Yeah, I think it's probably something to consider, but I think we will know if, like I said, Alvin ISD comes in here and asks for money.
yeah, I don't think I think Chris is probably on with the intent of it. It's that, is somebody putting a project in that's similar to yours, but didn't come to EDC to get any money? And are we going to help you now compete? Are we cannibalizing your industry and we're funding it?
We're giving you the upper hand.
Right.
So Dunkin' Donuts comes in.
Don't want a new guy coming in to take away business from your.
But does that have anything to do with public versus private?
Just the
If we're giving
funding
them
part of it.
Our funds are public.
Yeah, just because we're funding it with public funds.
But that would be a question for us, not for them.
Yeah, I think, yes. I think that's more internal. We're going to talk about that of, do we think that that's, that's a reason that we shouldn't do this project? And I also think that, I think it might have been on Chad's scorecard, but the uniqueness of the business is something that we will take into account. If somebody's coming in with another donut shop, for instance, we're probably, as a board, not going to be real excited about putting money into that because there's already so many of them, right?
Unless the city is putting on 10 more officers to support it.
Dentist offices, things like that we
Yes.
already have so many of, And I think that's where we would say it gets a bad uniqueness score, right? And we would score that low. You have something, Tammy?
Do you want to keep 2 and 3 on there at all, on either side? Do you think that question would be beneficial at all, since it's already a little bit confusing?
I think it would be just on our side of it, we would know it, and that would be a discussion we would have about that. It don't need,
I don't think they need.
it's a mental thing we would already
Yeah.
be looking at.
I think 99% of the time, we're going to brush over it and not really pay a lot of attention to it because it won't apply.
I think one should go on the application. 2, 3, and 4, we should keep to ourselves.
Keep on the EDC? Okay.
I agree. I think everything in jobs creation probably should go to the application.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Except for number 6. I don't
at
think-
5, well,
I would like to know average salaries for
Okay.
jobs, I think.
Like when she came with the beauty salon, I mean, she really
Really.
knew every, had
Okay.
it together.
Yeah, I think that's good information for us to.
If she needs to become a consultant.
so 1 through 5?
So what we'll do is I'll put those on the regular side, but then we'll include these on y'all's side more in a matrix for a grading. You guys can decide at the next one how you want that grading to look like. I'll just
Okay.
have the chart drawn on it, and then we'll fill in the blanks for the grading.
So with the salon, she had all of this information, and that's why
yeah.
her application was as thorough as it is. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember seeing it all,
Yeah.
so I know that they're filling it out.
Yeah. Well, it's not, it's almost like they're kind of doing our homework for us a little bit, which is,
For number 6, do you want that included on the on their side as well?
I think that's something that would be on our side,
Yeah,
because they're not going to really probably know that, and we'll make that decision of if that's a problem. I can't think of,
That falls under if it's a
Okay.
donut shop.
right.
And same thing with the financial impact. You want those maybe on the regular application and the matrix on y'all's side
I think
for the
so.
grading?
Yeah, I think 1, 2, and 3 probably could all go on the application, because I think that's good information for them to need to know if they're starting a business, for sure, either way,
That
right?
should be in their business plan, though. All this should be in their business plan that it says they're supposed to give us.
All right, role of city and/or county governments,
That should be just us.
that's us, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that there's,
Can the project be funded legally under 60 law? I mean, I hope so.
And
Like,
they wouldn't know that. That'd be part of ours, though,
yeah, right.
of making sure that it meets the criteria it's supposed to.
Yeah.
so when y'all
Existing.
say that this is us kind of thing, does that mean that like when the application's received, the staff here kind of goes through and already has these answers whenever it's presented to us? Or is it like as we're looking over the application, we're kind of line by line figuring the answer out to these questions?
Pretty much we'll figure most of it out and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So there's some that we help them with information on in the sense of a home business in a non-commercial area that maybe is wanting to set up a CPA office in their home and calls because they need to do a house remodel now for that little section. So, those things that they call, we're going to talk about some of that and what is and isn't allowable, what it's going to create, and ask those questions. So for the most part, there is a little vetting. If it's an email for regular projects, those always go to the president as well, so they're always in the know. No one's necessarily turned away unless it's completely out of what's allowable. which is set by the government code that Bobby was reading to you. So, yeah, if it can't be funded legally under the existing law, I'm going to let them know that. If they so choose to still go through this application, and it's lengthy, it's not, they got to fill all this out. If they want to waste their time and do that, then I'm definitely going to send that on, and you guys are going to get a chance to look at it, but typically they don't.
Typically, Tammy does a good job of saying, this one doesn't check the boxes, and lets the applicant know that they'll have to make some changes or do something before it'll make it to the board. And so staff will do some of that. And I think they should probably fill out some of the others, just because they are the legal things. And that way the staff can just look at it and say, okay, they told us yes, at least, right? And then when they come in here, we're going to ask questions and probably figure out a little bit more. I'm just reading through here. I like all of these for the applicant to answer, I think. All of these.
So put all the other ones on the applicant side and the EDC side, maybe?
I want to know what the applicant says for will the project benefit the overall public good? I just want to know what their opinion of their project is, right?
I mean, I like that one.
I don't think number 2 needs to be on there. Whether it's another business that's like it,
Yeah.
we'll know that.
And they might not.
They might not.
Yeah, but we will. Yeah, we should.
And staff would know that when they're going over it.
Okay, so 2 would stay internal?
I think 3 would be internal
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, I could see it going both ways, but
And keep that to ourselves.
It'd be a question of the size of the project of that.
yeah, some of these,
I mean, if you're putting in a business, you're gonna employ 5 people, ain't gonna affect the housing that much, but if you're doing a business that's putting in 300 employees, some of them's gonna wanna live close.
to that point, number 4 also is really for us to decide if there's adverse consequences from the project. I
Yes.
doubt they're going to incriminate themselves on that and say, oh yeah, now we're going to come in and destroy the water supply.
Yeah, so that's something we would,
So to be clear, these questions sound like they do require a bit of research. So how do we make clear what the expectation is of how these questions are answered? Or would it be a thing where we're reviewing the application, we're saying, oh, we don't know what effect this will have on the local housing? So, at that point, a staff member, who knows who, would be tasked to kind of figure out, and then we would circle back at the next meeting? Is that kind of what the expectation would be?
if we couldn't figure it out by looking at the job size and stuff, so where the housing would be. I mean, if they're putting on 5 jobs, like I said, it's not going to impact it that much, maybe a little, but there is still plenty around. But if it's 300, then it's going to impact it big.
Part of me doesn't mind them answering these questions and just saying yes or no. Putting it on the application and just having them give us their opinion of it. I would kind of like for them to at least have done the research to know if there's somebody else in town doing that. Is there another business like yours in the city limits? And that tells us that they had to go figure that out for themselves, and they didn't get here, and we tell them that. That gives them that time on the research.
Usually
do
a
it.
good business plan states that with a SWOT, SWOT analysis, okay, I want to put this business here. Who else is in this area? What's my competition?
If they ain't done that on their business plan, we don't want them.
Yeah.
I say we leave this stuff on the application. It'll just make our job easier anyway.
Yeah.
And if we see something that we don't like, then we ask them.
So, guys, this kind of falls in under the last agenda item, but part of what I kind of have a heart for is the people that are small business people trying to get their stuff off the ground. something we talked about whenever Betty was here was the idea of trying to help like incubate small businesses in the area, and also the ones who have been here a long time, who, as we know, this community is changing so much, and it's a deal where, between rising property taxes, changing demographics and things like that, if they don't stay ahead of the curve, they're likely to fall out of, business ability. So, I mean, when talking about the budget and what we plan on spending money on, something personally, I mean, I would like to see is us looking out for the small businesses, like myself, to be honest, guys. I mean, I dropped out of college to start my business. I don't have any background in finance, business administration, anything like that. I've had to learn the hard way. And some things have been very hard for me to learn, and a hope of mine is in, somebody like myself filling out an application, that you wouldn't have to hire a consultant like Chad to walk you through this thing, certainly. But at the same time, I guess I'm just trying to say that somebody who is a small business, who doesn't necessarily have a, solid business plan and all of that stuff put together, that does still have some work to put in to these sort of things. Asking good questions, I think, is awesome. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't want to rule out those people from having the ability to be considered and given the opportunity to grow.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think that we rule them out. Tammy does send out some resources for anyone that fills out the application, some SBA stuff, some, do you have that page, Tammy, that, I know that it has, and so it gives resources to help with that kind of stuff. It's also not, I don't think that it's EDC's role in that. To me, that is more of like a chamber role or, small business, SBA role. I do think there's a need for that. I'm just not sure that EDC fills that need specifically. I have a heart for that too, being a small business owner. I had to learn it all trial by fire, right? But business is tough. If you can't make it through this easy application, then you got a long way to go, And so it's cutthroat out there. This would be the easiest thing you probably do as a business owner, in my opinion.
Application.
But doesn't the city, Tammy, vet some of those applications?
When people, when businesses, I thought that's what he was reaching for.
No.
Sorry. When the businesses apply, don't they go through the city? The city looks over the applications before they're brought here to the EDC for us?
Only if I glance at it. If it's something that they haven't answered all the things yet, or it's just a halfway presented packet and they're asking for 100%, but there's no details, stuff like that, I will walk through that, let them know that, look, you can turn it in this way. But there's a good chance that the little effort you put in it, the EDC's not going to put much effort into their side of it either, meaning you just wasted both y'all's time. I don't turn them away. If it's something that doesn't fit the qualifications of a project, I let them know that. But at the end of the day, they can still fill this out. They still have the application. And if they want to go through doing their business plan towards something that doesn't fit, I'm still going to bring it to you, but they haven't. Normally, if it doesn't fit, they list, they go through the questions, they ask questions, I ask them questions. If it doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit, and they don't want to waste their time. But 99% have come to you guys. The only piece I do is critique and get more information from them when they just give me a halfway filled out packet. Here are some of those links. I send them the Doing Business in Texas link, the Comptroller of Texas link, Texas Economic Development and Tourism link, top small business grants in Texas, and the Texas Grant Watch. So in the event that it doesn't necessarily fit with what you guys do, so that they can go out there and still get information, all of those sites have a lot of, if you spend the time and you're wanting to start a business, there's a lot of information on there and a lot of explanations of what the information is. But you got to be willing to put in the
Yeah,
work.
and I think to speak to your heart on that, Chris, too, what we could do is if somebody does have an application that feels like it fits into the category that you're talking about, Tammy can send that on and we can help that person, you know, and put some effort into saying, hey, this is kind of what you need to do. I don't think there's a problem doing that, right? And if that's something that you want to grab a hold of and do, then we can certainly do that to be able to help those people to just understand.
And
And
the Alliance has offered.
The
as
Alliance
well.
can do that as well and help, and we can and point them in that direction. And if they get a mostly completed application, we can bring them in here and do it in person here too and say, hey, you know, at this moment, you're not really ready, but these are the things that we want you to go back and work on and, you know, try to teach them what it is that they're looking for so that when they do come back, they will be prepared. It just might not be in that first sitting with us, right? But we will have the opportunity to be in front of them and talk to them. So, yeah. That's really it on our application, right? Is there anything that,
I think that's everything.
That we missed?
Unless that you want added to it. If you saw anything in any of those examples that you like, that
There was
you
only
thought
one,
our
yeah.
application, other than the matrix I have to add. But if there's any other questions, you guys, and you may want to just look at it between now and the next meeting.
Yeah. And just send you an email with what we,
Absolutely.
or we can send it on the group email, that way everybody knows, so we're not duplicating a bunch of emails of us going, we all figure out, hey, we all like this. If Chris sends it and we're all copied in, we know, okay, that one's covered, I ain't gotta worry about that, instead of you getting 6
And I'll
emails.
communicate that amongst y'all. If I get something from one of y'all, I'll send y'all the update.
Yeah, because that way we ain't, like I said, bouncing 7, 8 emails constantly back and forth.
And I only pulled the city's examples from the ones that Chad had in here. You guys, if there's a city that you just really like visiting because you like what they have in that city, do a search and 99% of the time they have an economic development corporation. We're a 4B, different than a 4A. So, you know, that's important to, when you're looking on their website,
It's 4B.
that you'll be looking for examples of 4B applications. But go out there and look at a city that you just love going to and see what they have. And if there's something you really like, send it to me and, you know, I'll send it out to everybody and see if there's something we want to incorporate.
okay, awesome. So no action taken then?
Correct.
Okay, no action taken on Agenda C. We will move on to our consent agenda. Can I have a motion to pass our consent agenda, please?
Motion to pass the consent agenda?
We get a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None opposed. It passes 6-0.
Before you adjourn, can I just give you a couple of updates? Just a reminder that next Wednesday will be the planning session for the council. There's 2 different ways that that can be posted. One can be posted as allowing y'all to participate in the meeting. If I post it as a joint planning session with y'all in that piece, then there has to stay a quorum of y'all here during the entire time that they're talking about their topic, or I'd have to separate out the agenda, and it's basically one big topic of the 160 acres. So if it's not going to be a quorum, then the couple people that are here could participate. So if it were going to be the chair, the vice chair, and one other person, then I can post it as just a possible quorum, and there's not a quorum here, you guys could participate. So I guess my question would be, it's from 1 to 5 next Wednesday. It may end before 5, but definitely will be starting at 1, is who here thinks they may want to be here, because that's going to determine on how I post my agenda.
I won't be here, I know that.
I would like to attend.
Me too.
So Jason for sure, Derek, you're for sure,
Yes, ma'am.
Chris, you're for sure. Rubina, no.
Is it gonna be cast on the YouTube live?
I know we'll be recording it. I don't know if we'll be live with it. It's separated a little bit different in how the room's going to be set up.
Okay.
And just making sure that we can set it up with the microphones, picking up for that piece of it. That I'm not sure yet, but we'll have something recorded for a city record wise. Robina, you're not. Donald, you will not. Damon?
Can't make it. Might be traveling.
So right now, if we've got Jason, Derek, and Chris, I can post it and you guys can join in and be able to answer the conversations. Did you say Martina's on vacation?
She's on vacation.
Was she?
I don't, I'll text, she texted me tonight, so I can text her to see when she'll be back. So, for
'Cause
next week.
That's gonna be,
That would change.
yeah, I think what I'll do is, I think you're gonna wanna participate. So I think we're just gonna have to bite the bullet, and same as y'all that aren't gonna be here, Martina will have to catch the update on it, because if Martina's gonna be here,
It would mess us up. on
it's just
quorum.
gonna be a possible quorum,
Yeah.
or else y'all have to stay the entire
And then if one
time,
of
and
us
if someone
can't
has to
make it,
leave.
we'd have to cancel the meeting.
If she absolutely wants to be here, I value her input, I can step out. You know what I'm
So we'll keep it to 3 no matter what.
saying? Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't do that, you can't come in and go out, that's
no, 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 no.
a day.
Yeah, he wasn't saying that.
okay.
Replacement, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
She wants.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
and then the only other thing for the next meeting,
12th.
everybody's good with that date?
I won't be here. I'll be
Damon won't be
out the
here.
country.
That sounds
March
fun.
12th, right?
Sounds fun.
Yeah. I had to make sure I say that.
Lucky.
And then at the next meeting, at the next council meeting on Tuesday, city council will be voting for the appointments to place 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there is a possibility. For sure, we have 3 other applicants, might be 4 plus the current incumbents that have applied, which is all of you. So there is a possibility that you guys will have a new board, or some new board members at the next meeting.
What date is their meeting?
Their meeting is Tuesday.
25th?
And if you feel like your board runs as a well-oiled machine the way it is, feel free to reach out to your council members and let them know that.
No, I'm laughing because you're right.
Would it be better if we moved it to the 19th, so?
That's spring break week. I don't know if that messes anybody up, but.
Okay.
Talking about March, right?
Yeah, I was trying to just keep where we could have Damon here
I was
too.
just gonna bring my kids up here. If that was okay.
That's a great spring
Field
break.
trip.
But let me-
Kids, y'all
let me
gonna
double
love
check
this.
Real quick. You say March 12th?
Yes, sir.
Calendars.
I might not be on the board on March.
Yeah, I'm leaving March 12th. Leaving March 12th, yeah.
There's no
So,
guarantee.
March 12th, we're good?
Yeah, I'm leaving on March 12th.
And I'll send the information out. For the most part, it's going to be your applications and the project, the grant piece. So you'll have a chance to look at those cleaned up, and then if there's things you want to add or issues you have with them, I'll include that information if you just email me back.
Okay.
So the board will have that information. I don't have anything today that I know of that's a true action item for you on that day. Except for, I'm sorry, there possibly may be
We will have
an
them in
upcoming
March.
item for the Richard Rayner project.
I think they are planning on March, so.
And that one, if, we'll have to do our vice, or chair, vice, and secretary too. So when Damon not here, we can vote, we can nominate him for anything and he can't deny it. I like this.
Sorry, buddy.
And then that was all the updates that I had.
All right. Got a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no opposed. Motion passes 6-0. We'll close the meeting at 7:53.